Good morning, everyone. So we're going to continue to kind of dive into the baby rolls. Baby rolls are going to be at the end. We're going to work on unlocking the hips, but really getting a little bit more into the spine prior to working into the baby roll positioning. So hopefully we're going to get some good relief in low back mobility compared with hip mobility. So let's get started. We're going to start in a tall kneel position. If tall kneel is uncomfortable on your knees, it's okay to come into a sit or sit into a chair. We're going to make our big C shapes with our hands, getting into our crocodile breathing to start. So I like working crocodile breathing in different positions because the position that we are relative to gravity is going to change how the crocodile breath works in our body. So it's good to work on it in a lot of different positions. So big C shapes with our hands, thumbs going in the back, index fingers to the front, below the rib cage, above the hip bone, in that nice meaty space around the abdominal wall. We'll start with nice inhale in through the nose, exhale out through the mouth. As we inhale, we're going to expand out, blowing up our abdominal wall out like a balloon as we fill up with air. On the exhale, we're going to draw the navel into the spine. As you exhale, allow your hands to kind of squeeze and cinch. And I want to get that pressure. Index finger pressing into the abdominals. Side palm is pressing inward into the side body, and thumbs are pressing into the low back. And see if you can feel that even expansion out in all directions on that inhale. As you exhale, drawing navel into spine, see if you also notice a little bit of scooping of the pelvis, a little bit of engagement of the core with that exhale. Inhale. Pelvis can kind of lightly tilt back forward, but still focus on that breath expanding throughout, forward, side, and into the low back, out in all directions. A couple more breaths. Notice if that expansion in all directions is even or if it's harder to get that breath into specific regions. Is it harder to go out to the right side body? Is it harder to get into the low back, one side more so than the other? And then we're going to come down, hands into our quadruped position, spreading fingers out wide, grounding palms and extending elbows fully. I want to have the back toe tucked underneath. We're going to continue to focus on that crocodile breath for 2 or 3 breaths. Nice inhale, expanding out in all directions. Exhale, feel that drawing in of the belly button and light scoop of the pelvis. On the next inhale, as you exhale, we're going to start to load into our wrist. Slowly rocking forward, feeling into both right and left wrists. Inhale, we're rocking back. Exhale, drawing navel into spine. Inhale, filling up our balloon or crocodile breath. And we'll do 5 in each of the wrist mobility as we move into our pelvic mobility, or actually we'll go foot mobility next. After 5 nice slow breaths, we're going to turn fingers out to the side. We're going to start moving side to side. Exhale as you move over your wrist. Inhale as you come to center. Exhale as you go over the opposite wrist. As you inhale, we're still filling up that balloon. Exhale, drawing navel into spine and feeling that light scoop of the pelvis. Feel that full exhale, that full contraction of the belly to spine with that exhale. And I also want to get that nice pull, active hands, pushing on the floor, away from the palm, pulling towards the palm, depending on which direction you are going. You want to have that nice push-pull effect. See if you can feel that active shoulder blade. Shoulder blades, I don't want passively moving back and forth. I want them engaged as you slide from one hand to the other. Then we're going to spiral our fingers all the way back towards the knees. The closer the hands are, the less intense this is. The further out we come, the more intense. I don't want this to be massively intense, so find a nice comfortable starting position. Keep the palms lightly grounded to the floor. We're now going to inhale forward and exhale as we lightly rock back, but only going as far as you can, keeping the palms grounded. I don't want the palms to start lifting up. Again, inhale, filling up the balloon breath. Exhale, rocking back hips to heels, drawing the navel into the spine. And see if you can still feel that movement of the pelvis. As you exhale, rocking back, let it scoop lightly. As you inhale, rocking forward, let it tilt forward lightly. Then we're going to flip the palms to the back side, allowing the elbows to slightly bend. I want to stay grounded through the back of the palms. This position can be a little uncomfortable in the palms, so keep the core lightly engaged. We are going to start with just pressing into the floor to extend the elbows to see if there's any light stretch, specifically in the elbow space. If there's stretch in that elbow, that is exactly what I want to seek out and work on. I want to play lightly, moving into that stretch. Inhale as we bend the elbows and soften the stretch. Exhale, drawing navel to spine, light scoop of the pelvis. Inhale, filling up our balloon or crocodile breath. If you are able to get the elbows fully extended, then we're going to inhale as we rock forward. Exhale with the elbows extended, rocking back hips to heels, lightly scooping the pelvis on that exhale. We will then come off the wrist, just lightly roll them out, give them a little flow, make sure they're not getting overly stressed. We're going to put our attention now into our feet. So still on hands, but now tucking the big toe, turning the heels in. I would actually move the feet out just a little bit so that you can tuck the big toe primarily and have the heels turned into each other as far as comfortable. This will kind of lock down that big toe to keep it engaged. From here, we're rocking forward on our inhale. On our exhale, we're rocking back hips to heels, and very specifically, feel the weight of your hips load into the big toe joint without going into pain. Inhale into our crocodile breath. Exhale, drawing navel into spine, a little scoop of the pelvis. With each one, see if you can get a little bit more load into the ball of the foot. Can you start to feel it get some load stretch into the medial arch of the foot? How does this feel on the right big toe compared to the left big toe? How does it feel on the right arch compared to the left arch? Does one side feel a little tight, stiff? Is it painful? How does it feel compared to other days that you do this movement? Does it feel tighter today, or does it feel a little looser today? Part of doing these daily assessments is not just comparing it to how it feels at the beginning of the session to the end of the session, but also getting a pretty good sense of how does it feel day to day the first time you do it. Now we're going to bring our knees in a little closer so that we can turn our heels out and get tucked underneath all the way out to the pinky toe. I want to see if you can get that pinky toe tucked underneath with a little bit of load. And we're going to do the exact same thing. Inhale into our crocodile breath forward. Exhale as we sink hips to heels. Feel that pelvis move to the floor as you inhale, exhale, drawing navel to spine. Feel that light scoop of the pelvis. With that little bit of pelvic mobility work that we're doing with our breath, you may notice some tension in the low back. That's a good thing to kind of pay attention to. You want to make sure that that is not painful. With each one, we're seeing if we can sink a little deeper without going into stress or pain. How does this feel on the right foot compared to the left foot? How does it feel through the outside arch of the left foot and the right foot? Is one side tighter, more restricted? Is it painful? Again, I want to make sure that we are avoiding moving into painful positions, especially a 3 or above on a scale of 1 to 10, or 0 to 10. On the next one, as we sink back, kind of sink to light tension, not heavy tension. And now we're going to do our windshield wipers, moving from pinky toe all the way to big toe, seeing if you can touch the heels, and then all the way back out to pinky toe again. How does that right big toe feel compared to the left big toe as you roll into it and out of it? Is there a difference on the right side compared to the left side? This is a really, really important assessment for the feet. It's going to tell us a lot about what's going on in the hips and the spine. Now we're going to let our ankles go nice and flat, doing the exact same, sitting our hips back to heels, seeing how close can we get the heels to the hips to our heels. Inhale, coming forward, filling up the crocodile breath. Feel that pelvis tilt a little forward. Exhale, navel to spine. Scoop the pelvis as you reach the hips to heels. With each one, we're going to load our hips a little bit more onto our heels. How does this feel in the knees? How does it feel in the front of the ankles? I only want to go as far as comfortable. I do not want to move into pain. Do you notice, is the space of the front of the ankles, are they the same on both sides? Are you able to get them flat, or does one ankle have a little bit of space between the floor? Also notice your hips related to your heels. Are you able to touch your hips to your heels? If not, if you can only go so far, do you notice if you can get your right hip closer or your left hip closer? Does one knee feel a little bit stiffer than the other knee? Again, useful, valuable assessment. We're going to go ahead and come back to tucking the toes underneath. Nice grounded palms. And I want to get back into our breath, and we're going to work a little bit more deeply into our pelvic tilts. So coming back into our breath, nice inhale, filling up the belly. Feel that pelvis tilt down to the floor so that we get a little bit of a sway in our low back. On the exhale, as you draw the navel in, we're going to allow that scoop. But I only want that scoop at the pelvis. I don't want to round in our upper back. I don't want to go into a cat. So I want to try to keep the upper back stiff. Inhale, see how much can you fill up that belly, allowing that tilt towards the floor. How much sway can you get into your back without going into pinch or pain? On the exhale, how much can you scoop? Drawing that navel in without rounding the upper back. Can you feel some stretch into the low back without going into pinch or pain? With each one, see if you can scoop and tilt in both directions a little bit further with your breath without moving into an elevated pinch or pain. I want this to be comfortable, but see if you can feel some expansion through the abdominal wall as you tilt down towards the floor. See if you can draw that navel in and reach the belly button up to the ceiling as you scoop and draw out a little bit more of that low back stretch as you exhale. Then we're going to let our hips take a break for a moment, and we're going to come back to our arms. And we're going to do our arm spirals. So I want to focus on the elbow pit. I'm going to internally spiral the elbows so that the elbow pits go forward. Externally spiral so that the elbow pits go forward, and then internally spiral so that the elbow pits start facing back towards the feet. Again, I only want this movement to be related from the shoulder down. I don't want to get arched in the upper back. So as you spiral, at least not to start with, we're going to get to that in a second. As you spiral the elbow pits forward, feel the shoulder blades kind of lock down onto the rib cage. As you spiral the elbow pits internally, feel the shoulder blades release from that lock. But again, I want to kind of focus mainly on the arms. Can you feel some rotational stretch in either direction, either up at the shoulder socket or down at the wrists? How does it feel on the left side compared to the right side? You can even look at your elbow pits and see as you internally spiral or externally spiral so that they're facing forward, do they both go to the same position, or is one a little bit more turned in and the other one's a little bit more forward facing? Same thing as you internally spiral them backwards. Do they both go as far, or is one limited in its range of motion compared to the other? Again, these are useful assessment points. Now I want to start to allow the shoulders and the upper back to move a little bit. So as we internally spiral, we're going to push into the floor and feel that nice spread of the shoulder blades. It's going to get us a little rounded into our upper back. Can you feel some stretch between the shoulder blades and the spine? As we spiral out, feel the shoulder blades pack back down on the ribs. Feel the chest kind of move down towards the floor. We're going to exhale as we push. Inhale as we spiral our elbow pits so that they face forward again. And now I want to, let's actually just take a little break on our wrist just to get a little flow back into them. I don't want to overload them. Now we're going to come back and combine the pelvis and the spirals of the arms together. So hands are feeling good. Back onto nice grounded palms. Toes, again, are tucked underneath. I want that big toe lightly loaded. We're going to inhale, filling up our belly, getting a nice sway in the back. Elbow pits are facing forward. As we exhale, feel that scoop of the pelvis as we internally spiral the elbows, reaching through the floor. As we inhale, pelvis moves back down to the floor, opening up the belly, elbows spiral forward. See if you can get all of that pelvic tilt in both directions with as much spiral through the arms in both directions. Scooping, pressing, exhale. Inhale, feel the belly open up towards the floor. Nice big sway in the back. Sternum reaches down to the floor as well. Keep it a little slow and synced with your breath. And make sure that you are breathing smoothly through both directions. I want to watch out for any kind of breath holding. So again, we'll come off the wrists a little bit just to make sure that we're not overloading them. Now we're going to get into our child's pose position. So hands are going to come forward. I want to walk the hands a good amount forward. I want to keep the hips as much over the knees as possible. I want to try to prevent the hips from wanting to rock back. This will help us keep a little bit more load in our shoulders. Spread the hands nice and wide. Since we are rocked forward, I want to make sure our hands are really nice and sticky to the floor. So I want to have nice gecko-like hands. I don't want my hands sliding out. So I'm downwardly pressing, elbows are active and extended. We're going to take some breaths in this position before we do anything else, working our pelvic tilt. So as we inhale, filling up the belly, pelvis tilts towards the floor. Exhale, draw the navel into the spine and feel that light scoop. You may get some stretch in that low back as you exhale. If so, that's a good place to get a little play. Be very soft with it, but see if you can get that stretch to loosen up and mobilize a little bit. Feel that movement. Inhale, pelvis tilts down, opens up the belly to the floor. Exhale, drawing navel to spine, scooping the tailbone underneath. Feel that light stretch to the low back. Now on the next one, as we exhale, we're also going to reach our chest or sternum down to the floor as we scoop. So we're still exhale, scoop, and reaching the chest down. Inhale, we're going to come up, fill up the belly, allow the pelvis to tilt forward. Exhale, scoop as we reach. In fact, let's do a little bit of scoop first. So we're going to exhale a little bit, get a little pre-scoop. Keep scooping as we reach down with the chest. Coming back up, breathing in, allowing that pelvis to move back down to the floor. So I'm cueing in a number of things there. What I'm trying to get is that scoop of the pelvis will help to draw the rib cage down. It'll keep the core more engaged. What I want to prevent is extending the pelvis tilting forward, which gets our rib cage extended, and then we have a lot of excess mobility, specifically at the T12L1 junction, where the 12th rib ends and our low lumbar spine begins. I want to prevent that hyperextension by having a little bit of pre-scoop in the pelvis as we reach down. That's going to keep that rib cage downwardly pressed towards the pelvis, and it'll give us a little bit more stretch in the shoulders. So now on the next one, as we inhale and we exhale, I want to reach down into light tension and then maintain that tension. We're now going to press forward through our hands to slide our hips back and feel the shoulder blades move up towards the ears. And then we're going to pull from our hands to feel our shoulder blades slide down our upper back towards our hips. Exhale as you press. Inhale as you pull. And I want that same light movement of the pelvis. As you exhale, pressing away, feel the pelvis scoop as you draw your navel into spine. As you pull, your pelvis can tilt down towards the floor, getting a little bit of sway in the low back. How does this feel on the left shoulder compared to the right shoulder? We'll go ahead and rock out of that. When we're in that position, that can feel a little stressful on the shoulders, so I want to notice if one shoulder feels a little unstable compared to the other one, and I want to make sure that we're not going into pain. But that's a really good assessment point. If you're feeling some instability in one shoulder compared to the other, those are good. That's going to be a good thing to kind of bring up in a session. So we're going to come back into that hands and knees with our hands forward, and again, nice sticky gecko-like hands. And from here, again, toes are tucked. we're going to get into our bear position. So we're lifting the knees, and I want to keep the knees bent to start with, and we're going to reach our chest down towards the floor, pressing through those hands. Again, I need sticky hands because I don't want my hands sliding out from underneath. From here, we're going to extend one heel and knee reach one heel to the floor as we actively extend that knee. Other leg stays soft and bent, and then alternating. As we bend that knee, we're extending the opposite knee, reaching that heel to the floor. With each one, see if you can reach the heel a little further. Can you extend that knee a little more back towards that back wall? We're inhaling lightly as we bend the knee, and then exhaling as we extend the other knee. As you get into these a little bit and start to feel, where do you feel that stretch? Is it in the calf? Is it the back of the knee? Is it high up in the back of the thigh? Can you feel that area that feels tight start to get a little length and feel a little bit more mobilized? If so, then we can start to lightly walk up our feet a little closer to our hands, like one toe length at a time. See how that feels, kind of pressing through. Bring that foot up a little bit more, reach that heel. As you do this, try not to let your chest rise up. Try to keep your chest low towards the ground, and see how far can you bring your feet up towards your hands. If your heels do not touch the ground, that is not a problem. Do not try to force it. Once you get your hands as high as you can, keeping your shoulder position, then we're going to walk our feet back down. Nice and slow. Again, small increments, alternating one foot to the other. Once we get back to our starting position, we're going to come back towards our knees. Bring our knees to the floor. Now we're going to get into our shin box position. So from shin box, I'm in my left side shin box. So I'm bringing the left hand down to the floor, outside of my hip. I want to spiral that elbow out in a way, feel that chest open up. And we're going to start out with our just nice little knee openers on the back knee. So lifting that back knee up, squeezing it towards the ceiling, keeping the foot soft contact with the floor. Inhale as we bring the knee back down. Exhale, drawing navel into spine as you lift. Kind of notice how high you're able to bring that knee on this side. How does it feel in the hip? Is it tight? Is there a little clickiness to it? Is it uncomfortable? I want to make sure we're not moving into pain. I want to move at the speed of our breath. Nice inhale into our crocodile breath. Exhale, navel comes into spine as you squeeze. After 5 breaths, we're going to switch to the other side. Do the same thing. Grounding that palm, spiral that elbow out, nice open chest, grounded shoulder. Nice inhale into our crocodile breath. Exhale as we lift and squeeze. Ooh, I got a lot less range on this side today. With each one, seeing if we can open it up a little bit more. Again, inhale into our crocodile breath. Exhale, draw navel in as we lift that knee up at the same time. After 5 breaths, we're going to bring that back across to the other side. Now I want to play with our hip mobility of the back hip. I want to see if we can reach that back hip down towards the floor. Can you feel it touch? If it doesn't touch, that's okay. We don't need to force it. And then we're going to lift that hip, let it roll over the top of the other hip, kind of pivoting through the inside of my knee. Feel that hip. I'm going to inhale as we drop the hip back down to the floor, and we're going to exhale, drawing our navel into spine as we roll that hip up and over the top of the other hip. I don't want to move a whole lot through the chest and the shoulders. I don't want my shoulders to turn a whole lot. I want to kind of keep my chest as much forward facing as possible. And as we exhale, lifting that hip over, draw that navel in, see if you can get that same scoop action of the pelvis. That should elicit a little bit more stretch through the front or groin area of the hip. Inhale again, seeing if you can feel that hip drop back down to the floor. Get a good idea of how much travel you have in this back hip. From floor up and over the top. How much range and how does it feel? Does it feel smooth? What's the nature of that stretch once you exhale and squeeze into it? And then we're going to shift over to the other side and do the same thing. So again, grounded palm, elbows spiraled, chest is facing forward. Inhale, seeing how low can you drop that hip to the floor. Exhale, drawing navel in, light scoop of the pelvis. This side's a lot tighter for me. This is always my chronically tight hip. I'd say it feels a little tighter today than usual. If you're noticing that one side feels tighter than the other side, move even slower through it. I want to think of things, of joints like this as something that's weathered, like leaving a bicycle out in the rain. You don't want to go and just be real jerky with all the mechanics of it, because that's, things are more likely to break. I want to be slow with it. We're trying to lubricate these joints so that they can move more freely, and we need that lubrication to coat the joint before we start trying to move the joint. If you're moving a joint that's not lubricated, you're more likely to get you're going to get more friction, you're going to get things to break, tear. That's not what we want. So when it feels tight and clunky, we need to slow down even more in order to allow that fluid to coat the joint and get things to start moving a little bit more freely. And just from doing a few of these, I'm already getting a little bit more range and a little bit nicer quality of stretch through the front of this hip. So after 5, we're going to go to the other side. And I want to come back and look at the back knee openers, especially since I had a pretty significant difference one side to the other. We're going to open up that knee with our exhale 3 to 5 more times. Again, keeping it nice and slow. We're going to notice, do you get a little bit more range? Does it feel a little smoother the second time around? Nice inhale into our belly breath. Exhale, navel all the way into spine. And then same thing on the other side. Inhale into that crocodile breath. Exhale, drawing navel in. And I've already got a little bit more range of motion on my left hip. It's still tighter than the right, but I'd say I got an extra 20 degrees or more in range of motion, and just smooth, a little easier, doesn't feel as intense as it did the first time around. After 5, going back to the other side. Grounding that outside leg or palm. We're going to come back to moving the hip and scooping it over the top. Feeling that nice stretch through the front of the hip. And now we're going to add in our rotation. So as I'm scooping, I want to kind of pivot through that inside of the back knee to get a nice scoop, feel that first stretch. And then imagine you got a piece of bread and you want to hand it off to our graduate Skeletor over here. Inhale, bringing it all the way in. I kind of want to wind up the spiral and then exhale and unwind. With each one, we're seeing if we can reach through that back knee and extend through those fingers a little bit more. I want to do this without dropping the chest. I'm not reaching forward like we're doing a fold. I want to keep my spine tall, and we're spiraling around this position to see how far can we get our fingers to go. Again, get that nice scoop of the pelvis as you reach. And then we're going to transition over to the other side and do the same thing. Start with just a few of our nice little scoops before we add the rotation. Nice little exhale as we scoop. Inhale as we drop the hip back down. Again, notice, is the quality of the movement a little better the second time around? Still a bigger stretch over here. I still got it tight. This hip is tighter than the other side. And now we're going to add our reach and our rotate with rotation. And that stretch is big in comparison on this side. As I scoop the hip, I got a big stretch, and that stretch is restricted all the way through my rotation. Again, really good assessment points. If you got a tight hip through that anterior compartment, notice how that tight hip creates restriction through spinal rotation. Your spine is not going to move as well because your hip is tight. These muscles of your hip don't attach directly to the spine, but yet, here they are, creating restriction in the movement of your spine. That's because they're restricting the position of the pelvic bones, which is going to prevent your spinal bones from getting into the position they need to get into. So, understanding mobility is positionally related. Hips will contribute to other areas of the body not moving well. We're going to go ahead and go back to the other side, and now we're going to get into our folds, or modified pigeons. I've been playing with really reaching through the shin as opposed to the arrow. I like to change things up. I don't want to get focused on just one thing, but right now this is where the focus is. I like playing with different angles. So with the shin, we're going to reach both hands evenly. I want to keep those fingers as even as possible. As we exhale, drawing navel into spine, seeing how far can you keep both fingers even. Inhale, we're coming all the way back up. I'll back up a little bit so I have more room to reach. With each one, see if you can reach a little further. I want to avoid one hand going further than the other. How far can you reach both hands evenly? As we inhale, we're filling up our crocodile breath. As we exhale, draw that navel in at the same time that you reach. And start to notice, where do you feel this stretch? Do you feel it in the glute of the leg of the shin that is in front? Do you feel it in the front of the back hip that's in the back? Or do you feel it in your low back or even up into your shoulders? After 5, we're going to switch to the other side and do the same thing. So again, opening up that shin so that we can reach evenly with both hands. Keep the fingers even as you exhale. Inhale into that crocodile breath as we come all the way back up. Exhale, seeing if you can reach a little further, but keeping those fingertips even. The reason I want to keep the fingertips even is it keeps our chest square to the floor, so we're getting a much better assessment of How does our spine move in relationship to our hips, really the posterior hips? If you find that one hand wants to go further forward on one side compared to the other, that's probably going to be an indication of some tension in the low back area. So I want to see if we can get those things to start to mobilize and play a little bit better together. After the 5th breath, we're now going to transition back to the other side. And at this point, I want to start working side to side. So the transitions between can either be our nice windshield wiper across through the legs to go from one side to the other, or we can do our thread through, lifting up the back leg, spiraling it around, threading it through, and then lifting up the front leg, spiraling it around to make it the back leg. That's the transition I am going to use. So with our thread through, as you get back into your shin box, exhale as you reach both hands evenly. As you inhale coming back, we're going to transition all the way to the other side and do the exact same thing. By going back and forth between one side and the other, we're going to get a lot better sense of assessment of how is the quality of the left compared to the right. Where do you feel it, and where does it feel differently? I also want to pay attention to our transition, whether you're doing the windshield wiper or the thread through. As you're threading right back hip to switch to the from left side to right side, how smooth is that transition? How much control do you have in it? Compare that when you do the other side. Do you notice that it's harder to lift up this back hip? It's harder to maintain my balance on one side compared to the other. Again, really important assessment points. They're going to give us some indication of things that are going on within our core that might be working more effectively or efficiently on one side and not as much on the other. Now, as we're going back and forth, I want to start to open up our shin box, moving more into pigeon. So as you reach your hands, see if you can also start to slide that back leg a little bit. Reaching back. It does not have to go very far to start with. In fact, as we reach back to start, I want the knee facing out and the foot facing out. Not a very long reach. I want it to stay comfortable. I want to make sure it's not painful. But on each one, we're going to slowly start to extend that leg further and further back till we get a little closer to what we would consider maybe a yoga class pigeon pose. But I'm less concerned about that end range right now. I'm more concerned with the movement, the quality of control we have through our movement as we go from one side to the other. How does it feel on the right side compared to the left side? How smooth can you make that movement? As we're getting further into it, see if you can go from having that knee facing out to knee facing down through the floor. And how does that feel on the right side compared to the left side? So right now my knee is facing out, my foot is facing out. As I reach back, I'm seeing if I can spiral knee facing down, foot facing down as I reach through my hands. Again, if depending on mobility, that's going to be really difficult. So that we're trying to work to that, but I don't want to force it. All right, so now we're going to get onto our back. Now we get to get into our rotations before we play with some baby rolls. So laying on back, we're going to bring arms straight out to the side with our palms up. towards the ceiling. This is where I like to imagine we're laying in a bed of sand, and I want to make a nice big imprint of my entire upper back, shoulders, shoulder blades, upper arms, elbows, forearms, and hands. We're pressing down, maintaining that pressure, and I want this to be the most perfect imprint in sand ever, which means we can't slide around, we can't let our shoulder lift up. It's got to be really well grounded to the floor. We're going to lift our feet. Knees are going to be a little bit less than 90 degrees, so tucked in just a little bit. Or sorry, the hips are a little less than 90 degrees. The knees are around 90 degrees. Again, keeping the shoulders well grounded. We're going to inhale at center, filling up our crocodile breath. Exhale, drawing navel into spine. And we're going to let one hip roll over the other, only going as far as we can without losing our imprint in the sand. Inhale as you come back to center. Exhale as you go to the other side. Make your primary focus your shoulders and not the range of motion of the hips. Go small in your rotation. Maintain good pressure through the floor with your shoulders. Notice if, as you rotate your hips to the left and to the right, which shoulder is easier to keep grounded. Does one shoulder feel loose or light off the floor, like it wants to lift? Which one do you have to engage more in order to keep grounded? Again, this will give us some indication of both immobility, like thoracic spine immobility, as well as posterior core instability related to the shoulders. Be a really big deal. So I want to have a good sense. How well can you keep those shoulders grounded? With each one, we can start to explore a little further into the rotation, as long as we're not going into pain and as long as we're not losing our imprint in the sand. How far are you able to rotate to the left compared to the right? I have less rotation to my right. My left shoulder feels a little less stable on the ground. When I rotate to the left, I feel like I can go really far. I have good thoracic mobility and core control in one direction. The other direction, there's some immobility and some instability. We're going to go ahead and let our feet come nice and flat to the floor. Actually, we'll let both legs go flat. Then we're going to bring one foot flat. And we're going to move that foot out to about 45 degrees from the midline of the body. This is where I want to maintain a really good grounded tripod foot through that flat foot. I want the big toe, outside pinky toe, and heel evenly loaded. If we got good grounding through the tripod foot, the heel is going to remain directly over the ankle. So if our knee turns in, it's going to pick the pinky toe up off the floor. If our knee turns out, it's going to pick the big toe off the floor. So I want to keep that knee directly over the heel, and we are going to stomp down on our tripod as if you're trying to like squish grapes underneath the entire foot, all 3 points of contact. I want to squish the grapes under the big toe, under the ball of the pinky toe, and the heel evenly. As we're stomping those grapes, pressing down, the hip bone is going to lift up towards the ceiling. I want to see if we can feel some stretch through the front of this hip. Inhale, allow the hip to come back down to the floor, filling up our crocodile breath with that inhale. Exhale, draw the navel in as you press. Now, as you're doing this, we are only pressing through one foot. The opposite leg needs to be completely soft. So if you are pressing through that outstretched leg, if you feel that opposite hip wanting to lift up or the glute tightening up, see if you can let that leg soften and only press through one side. Scooping into it lightly. Feel into that stretch as you exhale. Inhale on the way down. With each one, we're trying to scoop up into the ceiling, and the more you're able to scoop and the higher you're able to get that hip bone, you should start to notice that your glute is naturally getting tighter. We're putting that glute into a contracted state. So I want to feel that tight glute. We're not squeezing the glute. We're pressing into the floor, scooping the pelvis, and feeling that glute get contracted. With each one, see if you can get a little bit more action out of that glute by driving up to the ceiling. We'll do one more. Feel that active glute, and let's do the same thing on the other side. So again, foot comes flat to the floor, move that foot out to about 45 degrees from the midline of the body. Feel that tripod foot squashing grapes on the floor. As we press down with our exhale, feel that hip bone moving up towards the ceiling. Inhale as we let it drop. Exhale, drawing navel into spine as we scoop into it. Again, I want to make sure that knee is staying directly over the heel. I don't want that knee turning in to where we lose contact with our pinky toe or the ball of the pinky toe. Again, I want to keep those squished grapes under the entire foot. Feel every square inch of the sole of the foot grounding down into the floor. If you only feel it on the inside of your foot, then load to the outside of the foot. If you only feel it on the outside of the foot, then load a little bit more to the inside of the foot until you feel it evenly across front to back and side to side of the foot. As we're doing this, we're exhaling, we're squeezing, we're tilting our tailbone up towards the ceiling, feeling that stretch through the front of the hip. See if you start to feel that glute tighten up and contract. If you're able to feel that glute tighten up, we're going to move a little bit more into it. See how much contraction can you get in that glute. Again, this is a good assessment. How does the right side feel compared to the left side? We're going to come back to the other side and do the same thing, but now we're going to add to it. So I've got my left foot down, my right leg is straight. I'm going to bring my right hand up and overhead. If it's difficult to feel your arm soften to the floor, like it feels like it needs to be elevated, then let that arm come out to the side a little bit so that your elbow softens down to the floor. We're going to inhale into our crocodile breath, exhale, scoop our tailbone up towards the ceiling. We're going to do 3 more of just these, and then we're going to add to it. So scoop into it on the exhale. Inhale, let it soften. See if you're able to get that nice glute activation on this. How much can you feel that glute really firing up and working? On the next one, as you fire that glute, extend that hip up. We're now going to take our left hand and reach across the body. As I reach, I'm keeping my hand reaching at chest level. And I don't want this reach to make me lose my knee. So from here, I'm scooping up towards the ceiling with my hip. I'm reaching across the body, but I don't want that knee to cave. I'm continuing to squish grapes as I reach. I don't want my reach to take away all that squishy grapes underneath my foot. If anything, as I reach, I want to squish even more. Inhale, we're going to come all the way back to the floor. Exhale, drive through that foot, and then add our reach.
Feel that nice activation of the glute. As you reach, continue to press through the foot to maintain that active glute. And then we're going to do the same thing on the other side. Other foot comes up, out to 45 degrees. Opposite arms going overhead. Drive through that hip. We'll do about 3 extensions just the hip without the reach. Inhale as you let it soften. Exhale, feel that nice scoop and try to get that active glute. Notice if one glute feels more active than the other. Notice if one knee feels a little shaky compared to the other. It's a little wobbly. On the next one, as you exhale, drawing navel in and scoop, we're going to reach across. Again, I don't want my reach to allow my knee to cave down to where I lose my tripod foot. Knee is directly over ankle. We are still squashing those grapes as we reach. And if anything, as you're reaching, press even more firmly. Feel that glute. Continue to fire up and be active as your fingers are reaching away. Nice. Now we're going to roll over onto our belly. We're going to do what I call a scorpion stretch. We're going to let our arms come straight out to the side. Palms are down. I'm bending one knee. Now this movement I want to be really, really soft with, especially if you have low back tightness or pain. So I want to make sure that we go slow and we don't move into discomfort on this. Reaching out, palms are down. I want shoulders lightly touching on the floor. I got one foot bent up towards the ceiling. We're going to actively lift that knee like you're trying to touch the ceiling with your heel. So that lift as high as you comfortably can. This alone may be a significant stretch, and this may be as far as you're able to go. If you're able to do this without too much trouble, as you reach and extend, now we're going to let that hip roll as far as we comfortably can without our shoulder lifting up off the floor. And then bringing it all the way back down. Inhale as you come back to your starting point. Exhale as you lift and rotate. And with each one, you're seeing if you can reach that foot a little bit further back without that shoulder coming up off the floor. After 5 breaths, we're going to switch and do the same thing on the other side. Starting with just some nice simple lift that heel on your exhale, making sure that it's not painful. Inhale, letting that knee back down. Again, if this is a significant stretch, this is really as far as we need to go with this movement. If your back and your hips feel good as you lift and reach, now as you continue to exhale, we're seeing how far can that hip roll without the shoulder coming up off the floor. Inhale as you bring it all the way back to the center. Exhale as you lift and reach. It's like we're trying to reach that foot as if you're trying to bring it all the way back down towards the floor on the opposite side. After 5, we're going to come back to center. We're going to roll back over onto our back. And we're going to see if we can combine those two movements.
Now, the scorpion, if you are only able to lift your knee, do not try to do this next part. Continue to work with either the hip reach, driving through and reaching across, or continue to work with the scorpion, just lifting that back heel off the knee off the floor and working into that nice juicy stretch. I don't want you to force this. I definitely do not want you to move into pain. If your hip and low back mobility are good, we're going to come back into our 1 foot out to 45 degrees. Opposite arm is overhead. I want to drive through our foot. Feel that first stretch, glute contraction. Reach across. We're seeing how far can we reach without our foot coming up off the floor. And then we're going to allow our foot to release and continue to reach so that it carries us onto our belly. Once we get to our belly, we're going to keep our arm overhead. We're going right back into that scorpion, lifting the heel towards the ceiling, reaching that hip across as far as we can without the shoulder coming up off the floor. When we get to that point, we're going to let that shoulder release and see if we can find our foot, sole of the foot to the floor as we come all the way back to our back. And then we can switch and do the same thing on the other side. Switching feet, driving that hip up, nice scoop, active glute, reach across as far as you can, keeping that squished grape feel in the feet. Once you get there, let the foot release. Continue to reach and slide through the fingertips as it takes you from back onto your belly. Inhale, exhale, lift, heel, open that hip as far as you can without the shoulder coming up. Once you get there, let that shoulder release. Keep reaching through that foot till the foot finds the floor. We can go back and forth on this a few times, switching from one to the other. Drive through the hip, reach. Keep that squashed grape till you get to your full reach, then release the foot and continue to slide through those fingers. Inhale, exhale into the scorpion. I want to find the smooth nature of this movement. If it is stressful, if it is painful, then you need to back off. This is a movement that we want to see if we can develop into. I don't want to force it. It's also a good one, if you're able to do it, to notice the quality of the movements from one side relative to the other side. Does one side move a little smoother, a little easier than the other side does? All right, we're going to come back up into our tall kneel position, making our big C shapes with our hands. And we're going to finish with our crocodile breath. Since we started in a kneeling position, I want to finish in a kneeling position so that we can see if the quality of this breath has improved with our movement. So making that nice big C shape, squeezing in. Inhale, inflating out in all directions, blowing up that balloon. Exhale, draw navel into spine. Feel that light scoop of the pelvis. Feel the core kind of tighten up. Inhale, allow the pelvis to tilt a little bit. Feel that expansion in all directions. This is a good place to kind of notice as you exhale and your pelvis scoops, notice how your rib, your 12th rib, drops down a little bit towards the pelvis. Notice how that creates tension in your core. As you inhale and the pelvis tilts forward, notice how that your 12th rib lifts up a little bit. This is just normal mechanics of our breath, but it's nice to kind of get that awareness of it, to feel how these things move just naturally. That way, when they are not moving, we know that there's something not natural taking place. That's something we want to work on. I'll be curious, how has your breath changed from the beginning of class to this point based on the movements that we did?